Have you ever woken up on a beautiful morning, picked up your usual cup of coffee, only to find your electric bill has spiked by $300, even though you live alone, don't own a whale, and aren't running a rave in your garage? I have. And when? I checked the security camera. I didn't see a thief. No hacker plugging some covert device into my grid. I saw my neighbor Karen charging her shiny white Tesla using the outlet in my front yard, as if it were a public utility station, and I was the night shift technician. What happened next, it wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't just about a surge protector turning her $90,000 car into a paperweight. It was how I exposed an entire corrupt HOA, legally with one camera, and with the belief that sometimes the strongest resistance is simply standing your ground. I'm Marcus Hill, and this is the story of how I turned an HOA Karen's Tesla into a six-figure silver brick, using nothing but the law and a front yard power outlet. There are moments in life you never forget. For me, it was when I opened my March electric bill and nearly threw it at the wall. $476.83. I live alone, no hot tub, no school of tropical fish, and I certainly don't run a data center out of my garage. As a former military engineer specializing in electrical systems, I'm not some clueless rookie. I know where every watt in my house goes. So that number was an accusation. And I didn't need the FBI to figure out who did it. Her name was Serena Caldwell, the new woman across the street. Glossy white Tesla Model X, blood red manicure, and a stare like she was born believing no parking signs were personal invitations. When we first met, I was polite. I believe in neighborly decency, even if I'm not exactly Mr. Congeniality. But she didn't need that. She needed electricity. 3 days after the billing shock, I started watching. Each morning, the Tesla was parked suspiciously close to my side fence, right next to the outdoor outlet I used to run the lawn equipment. Perfect location for a midnight power thief. I installed a discreet wireless motion-activated camera under the eaves, and right on schedule. 2:17 a.m., the footage showed Serena, in glossy yoga gear, plugging her Tesla charger directly into my outlet like it was a federally funded charging station. No shame, no subtlety, like she was doing community service. I didn't confront her. Right away. Military training taught me, arrogant people self-destruct if you let them. But what finally made me act? It wasn't the money. It wasn't audacious. It was when I stepped outside in the morning and saw the charging cord still dangling from my outlet, like a slap in the face. And Serena, sipping coffee from her second-story balcony, said, "Oh, it was so bright out, I thought that outlet was shared with the neighborhood. You don't use it at night, do you?" Neighborhood outlet? I'm sorry, do I look like a public utility? I didn't yell. I didn't go nuclear on the HOA Facebook group. Instead, I did what I do best. I made a plan. I opened my garage and pulled out the Smart Surge Defender, a device I once tested during my military days. It doesn't damage electronics, unless you plug in incorrectly or try to draw excess power, in which case it delivers a completely legal voltage spike that fries any unapproved device's stabilizer. I attached it to the outdoor outlet with a small sign that read, "Private outlet, surge protected, do not use without permission." But I knew Serena wouldn't read it. Or rather, I wouldn't believe it. That night, I kept the porch light off. The house looked asleep. I sat on the couch watching the camera feed on my phone. At 1:58 a.m., Serena appeared again. New outfit, fuzzy designer slippers, and then, click, she plugged in. At exactly 2:01 a.m., the system activated. Lights blinked. And suddenly, the Tesla stopped charging, the warning light glowing red. She yanked the cord, stumbled back, scanned the darkness, but it was too late. I didn't go outside. I just sipped cold coffee, turned up the volume, and listened to Serena screech like a cat stepped on glass. Her car was dead. Black screen. No lights. A four-wheeled $90,000 brick sitting on the curb, and naturally, not a word of apology. Next morning, I stepped outside with a steaming mug of coffee and watched her call the tow truck. She didn't look at me, but I smiled, because I knew the game had just begun. And this time, I wasn't just playing with an outlet. I was playing with the entire HOA. The morning after the Tesla incident, I figured that was the end of it. Lesson learned, battery fried, and maybe, just maybe, Serena Caldwell would think twice before stealing power from a neighbor again. But I forgot one crucial detail. People like Serena don't learn by consequence. They retaliate, and they never come alone. Around 11 a.m., the doorbell rang. Not once, not politely, but a series of sharp, rapid-fire rings, the kind that said, "We're not here to chat." I opened the door to find Bob Halpern, HOA president of Pinewood Estates, standing there with a clipboard like he was about to hand me a parking citation. Right beside him, Serena herself. Hair perfect, lips pursed, and fury practically steaming from her ears. "Mr. Hill," Bob began, with the fake calmness of a man who's had practice gaslighting. "We'd like to discuss a serious matter regarding your recent behavior within the community." I leaned against the doorframe. "Let me guess. Something about my outdoor outlet?" Serena stepped forward, eyes burning. "He sabotaged my vehicle. I was just borrowing a little electricity, like any reasonable neighbor would. But he set a trap. That surge thing fried my battery. He could have killed someone." I blinked. "You mean when you trespassed onto my property in the middle of the night and plugged into my personal outlet, with a warning sign posted right next to it?" Bob lifted a hand like he was presiding over a kindergarten mediation. "Regardless, the incident resulted in damage to a resident's personal property. That puts the HOA in a difficult position. We're requesting that you disconnect any unapproved surge protection devices and refrain from creating potential hazards." I stared at him down. "Hazards? That outlet is on my land, Bob. I have the plot plan and deed to prove it. That warning sign was clear, and the system I installed is certified and legal. You want to regulate my outlets now? You better come with a judge and a warrant." Serena practically shrieked and shoved a stapled document into my chest. "This is from my lawyer. If you don't pay for the damages, I'll sue you for vandalism and endangering public safety." I unfolded it. Legal fluff. A bunch of poorly worded threats, vague accusations, and zero legal merit. I handed it back to her with a chuckle. "Well, good luck with that. Because I've got 3 weeks of security footage, timestamps, electric, usage logs, and a system built to military safety specs. Do you want this in court? So do I." Bob tried to regain control. "Look, Marcus, we at the HOA want harmony. But if you continue to act uncooperatively, we'll have to consider monthly fines for community disruption." I raised an eyebrow. "You're going to fine me for not letting someone steal from me? Is that the new HOA standard?" For the first time, Bob had no response. Serena scoffed and stormed off, her heels clicking down the sidewalk like a drumbeat of entitlement. Bob followed, silent and visibly uncomfortable, his clipboard swinging uselessly by his side. I stood there for a moment, watching them go, and I realized this wasn't over, not by a long shot. That night, I got to work. I backed up all my camera footage, printed screenshots, saved my power usage records before and after Serena moved in. I pulled my property line documentation and even reviewed the HOA bylaws line by line, looking for any language they could try to weaponize. I didn't. Just want to defend myself. I wanted to bury their nonsense with facts. 2 days later, I received a formal letter from Pinewood Estates HOA. It read, and I quote, "Your installation of a power surge device constitutes a safety risk to the community and is in violation of Article 4, Section C of the Community Standards." I laughed. Article 4C doesn't even exist. And if it did, I highly doubt it regulates how a private homeowner protects his own outlet from theft. I wrote my response. A full-page rebuttal with attachments, time-stamped video of Serena's repeated theft, my electric bills showing the 300-month spike, property deed, warning signage photos, the full manual of my surge protection device showing compliance with state and federal safety standards, and then I CC'd the HOA, their attorney, the county zoning department. At the bottom of the letter, I added, "Should any member of the HOA continue to harass, fine, or threaten me for protecting my own property, I will pursue legal action for negligence, harassment, and aiding in repeated criminal trespass. Let me be clear. I'm not the neighborhood troublemaker. I'm not the guy who complains about grass height or barbecue smoke. I didn't join this HOA war by choice. But if they're coming for me, I come prepared. And here's the thing these HOA wannabe warlords don't get. You don't mess with a man who designs electrical defense systems for a living. You don't threaten someone with a camera on every corner of his property. And above all, you don't expect a quiet veteran like me to back down when you picked the wrong outlet. I thought the HOA letter would be the climax, their final shot across the bow. But no, Serena Caldwell wasn't finished. She didn't want resolution. She wanted revenge. And her next move? It wasn't legal. It was public. It started on a Thursday. Morning around 7:30 a.m. I was outside watering my front yard, simple morning routine. Birds were chirping, sun was barely up. Peaceful, right? Until I noticed a cluster of neighbors, maybe 5 or 6, gathered across the street, whispering and pointing toward my house. At first I thought nothing of it. Maybe HOA gossip. Maybe Serena was complaining about my American flag not matching. The color harmony guidelines or whatever nonsense they had in the book this week. But then I saw it, a flyer, bright pink, posted to my mailbox, the HOA bulletin board, and several other mailboxes up and down the street. In bold black letters, "Beware, dangerous electrical setup at 118 Pine Grove Lane." And beneath it, a blurry still-frame photo from my own security camera footage of Serena plugging her Tesla into my outlet. No context, just her, mid-action, with a caption underneath. Residents use illegal electrical traps to destroy their neighbor's vehicle. I live alone, possibly unstable. I pulled it down and stared at it for a solid 10 seconds. I wasn't angry yet. I was stunned. Then, I saw the bottom. Issued by concerned members of the Pinewood Estates community. Contact Serena Caldwell for more info. There it was. No shame, no subtlety, just a full-on smear campaign. Later that morning, I checked the community Facebook group, and just as I feared, it was already blowing up. Serena Caldwell, Ho Queen. Friends, please be aware we have someone on our street using military-style equipment in his yard. Several residents are concerned. Please be safe. More to come. Nancy W55. Oh no, is this the same guy who glared at my son last week? Creepy. Dave Tire Guy. If he's doing something illegal, why haven't the police done anything? Someone needs to call code enforcement. Jim. God bless this man. Maybe Serena should stop stealing electricity? That one gave me a smirk. But still, this wasn't just HOA squabbling anymore. This was a character assassination. And where?
Do you think most people lean when a single man, former military, who lives alone is accused of booby-trapping his property?
Exactly. By noon, I had HOA volunteers knocking on my door. First came Brenda, the neighborhood welcome chair. Nice lady in theory. Always has banana bread at meetings, never says anything without smiling. Marcus, I just wanted to check. In. There's some chatter about your, electrical setup. People are worried. You know how fast these things escalate. Maybe you could explain what's going on. I invited her in, poured her a cup of coffee, and played the entire surveillance video from Serena's nightly visits. Then I showed her the sign, the deed, the surge protector specs, everything. To her credit, Brenda's face went pale. She did this every night? For weeks? I nodded. And the HOA didn't care. They warned me to install protection on my property. Now she's handing out flyers calling me dangerous? Brenda left quietly. And by 3 p.m., I noticed the flyers started disappearing from mailboxes. I suspected she told others. But the damage was done. People were whispering. Kids were walking. Their bikes around my driveway like it was booby-trapped. And then came the real kicker. The county inspector. He showed up the next day. Clipboard in hand, badge on chest, wearing that look of reluctant duty. Mr. Hill, we received an anonymous complaint about illegal electrical devices being used in a residential zone. I need to inspect your exterior setups. I let him in. No resistance. In fact, I walked him through every wire, every fuse box, every surge outlet. I handed him a copy of the manual, the safety certifications, and even the warranty information. He did a full inspection. 30 minutes later, he handed me the final note. All systems are up to code. No violations found. Boom, done. Case closed. Or so I thought. That night, I got a knock around 9 p.m. Not Serena, not Bob, a teenager, nervous, holding something. It was a petition. Hey, sorry to bother you, sir. I live down on Maple Way. Some folks are circulating a petition to vote you out of the HOA. I just wanted you to see it. I read the top line. Motion to remove Marcus Hill from Pinewood Estates HOA voting rights due to conduct unbecoming of a community member. It had 12 signatures, 12 people who never once spoke to me, 12 people who believed a woman with a fried battery over a man with facts. I thanked the kid and sent him on his way. Then I sat on my porch, just me, a cold beer, and Duke, my aging Labrador, resting at my feet. They think this is going to break me, I muttered aloud, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. They didn't know I spent 2 tours, overseas building electrical grid defenses under rocket fire. They didn't know I once dismantled an entire insurgent-run radio station in Afghanistan using just a toolkit, a drone, and 36 hours of no sleep, and they sure as hell didn't know that I wasn't just going to roll over because 12 people were scared of a surge protector. So I stood up, walked back inside, sat down at my computer, and I drafted something I hadn't written in years, a full formal complaint to the State HOA Oversight Committee, with evidence, with witness statements, with violations of HOA conduct by Bob Halpern and Serena Caldwell, and I titled it simply, Weaponized Governance, How an HOA Ignored Theft and Tried to Bury the Victim. Because this wasn't about an outlet anymore. This was about something far bigger, how power, electrical or political, is abused when no one fights back. When I sent the complaint to the State HOA Oversight Committee, I felt the tension in my shoulders drop just a bit. That file, 37 pages, with attachments, timestamps, sworn statements, and color-coded charts, wasn't just paperwork, it was warfare in PDF form. I didn't expect a response right away. Bureaucracy moves slower than molasses uphill. But I wasn't just relying on the state to clean up this HOA mess. No, I had my own version of a counter-offensive brewing, because if they wanted to play the public narrative game, I was going to flip the script, with undeniable truth and a touch of good old-fashioned embarrassment. Step 1 was exposure. Uploaded a 5-minute no-nonsense video to the Pinewood Estates Facebook group. No commentary, no accusations. Just security footage, Serena walking onto my lawn plugging and her Tesla My warning sign visible in the background, her walking away like she owned the place, the morning after, her standing next to her dead car on the phone, freaking out. Then I ended the video with a single line of text. Stealing is still stealing, even if you wear sunglasses and drive a Tesla. M. Hill, that video got shared 47 times by sunset. Within hours, my inbox was flooded. Tom from 4 houses down. Marcus. I had no idea. I thought this was some petty argument. I'm taking my name off the petition immediately. Joanne used to host HOA wine nights. She lied to us, Marcus. Flat out. You handled this better than I would have. Jim, the legend from earlier. I knew she was full of it. If you ever run for HOA board, I've got your back. HOA patrols aren't just about conflict. They're about momentum, and now I had it. Step 2 was documentation. I started gathering stories. Turns out Serena had a pattern. Gregory, a retired school principal 2 streets over, told me she once accused him of exposing himself just because he was shirtless, mowing his lawn. Lena, a single mother, said Serena had filed 3 separate code violations against her for having excessively pink flowers in her garden, and poor Tony, who'd just installed solar panels, said Serena tried to get them removed because they disrupted neighborhood energy harmony. You can't make this stuff up. But with witness statements and dated complaints, it didn't need to be fiction. It became evidence. By the end of the week, I had more than enough to turn this HOA ship around. And just in time, too. Because, On Friday morning, I got a formal invite to attend a special emergency HOA board meeting. Subject line, resolution hearing regarding conduct of Marcus Hill, classic movie. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, 7 p.m. sharp. They wanted it low profile, but word had already spread. When I walked in, the room was packed. Not just the board members, not just Serena. At least 40 neighbors, half of whom I didn't even recognize, were already seated, eyes watching me like I was on trial. I didn't mind. Let them watch. Titunen. The head table, Bob Halpern, HOA president, face flushed and fake smiling, Carol, the treasurer, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else, and of course, Serena, who sat as if she were royalty waiting for the peasant to apologize. Bob cleared his throat. Mr. Hill, we've reviewed recent events and believe it's necessary to address your conduct and how it may be affecting community peace. This meeting will serve as a hearing to determine whether formal disciplinary action should be recommended. I didn't blink. I just stood, turned toward the audience, and calmly pulled out a thick binder. Then I'd like this to be on the record. I walked to the front, placed the binder down, clicked a remote. A projection screen lit up behind me. Slide 1, Serena stealing power. Timestamp. Slide 2, HOA warning letter to me, despite the theft. Slide 3, legal specs of my surge protector with certification. Slide 4, county inspection report. No, violations found. Slide 5, Facebook smear post and the pink flyers. Slide 6 to 9, community statements from neighbors she'd harassed. Then I paused. Let it sit. If your version of community peace means letting people steal from neighbors, lie to the board, and weaponize the HOA to cover it up, then maybe I'm guilty. But if it means protecting your home, defending the truth, and refusing to be bullied, then maybe you owe me an apology. Silence. Not even Bob had a rebuttal ready. It was Carol, the treasurer, who finally spoke up. I move to dismiss this hearing entirely. There's no cause to sanction Mr. Hill. Someone from the crowd. Seconded. Bob tried to speak but stumbled over his words. Serena? She turned beet red and stormed out. Again. That woman really had a signature exit. After the meeting, neighbors I'd never spoken to came up and shook my hand. A few brought pie. One even handed me a cold beer from his cooler in the trunk. But more than anything, they said the same thing. Thank you for standing up. And I realized something important that night. This fight was never really about an outlet or even a car battery. It was about control, about the illusion of power. And what happens when someone says, no more. So I went home, sat back on the porch, Duke at my feet. I watched the porch light glow softly above the now infamous outlet, still armed with the same surge protector, and I smiled, because the committee tried to make me the villain. But now, even the HOA had to admit they'd messed with the wrong man. You'd think after that HOA meeting things would quiet down, that the public shaming, the binder of evidence, and Serena's dramatic storm out would be enough to bury the whole thing. And for a few days, it was. Neighbors waved more. People, who used to cross the street when they saw me, now stopped to chat about surge protectors, military engineering, or just to say, hell of a presentation, Marcus. I even got a batch of snickerdoodles from Lena down the block with a sticky note for the neighborhood's unofficial security chief. I won. Right? Wrong. Because when people like Serena lose publicly, they don't reflect, they retreat, and they plot. It started subtly. HOA newsletters stopped appearing in my inbox. HOA notices were posted to my door but folded backward so I couldn't see the content unless I peeled off the tape and unfolded them, like I was an outsider now. One neighbor, Tim, guy with a boat parked where it wasn't supposed to be, whispered to me at the gas station, "Hey man, you know Serena's not done, right? She's saying you rigged the whole thing. Claims you edited the footage. Bob's still trying to spin it." I laughed. They can spin whatever they want. Facts don't bend. But part of me knew they weren't done, and I had a feeling they were going to hit me where it hurt, legally. Sure enough, on the following Monday, I got a letter taped to my front door. No stamp. Hand-delivered. From Caldwell and Ashbury Law, not a real firm. Just a friend of Serena's from her yoga studio who happened to pass the bar and liked printing fake threats on letterhead. Inside was a notice of intent to file civil action, alleging intentional property damage, harassment, emotional distress, endangerment through negligent engineering. That last one actually made me laugh out loud. I framed the letter, right next to my honorable discharge and a photo of Duke as a puppy. But this wasn't just theater anymore. Serena was trying to bury me in paperwork. Death by nuisance lawsuits, HOA style. So I called in backup. His name is Raymond Tran, former Army JAG officer, now a corporate attorney who owes me a favor from back in Kandahar when I fixed his barracks wiring and kept his Xbox from frying in a surge. Ray read the letter, looked at me, and said, "Want me to shred it or frame it twice?" I handed him a coffee. "Neither. I want you to write a response that makes her question her life choices." Ray smiled. A dangerous smile. The kind only lawyers and men who've handled explosives get away with. Within 48 hours, Serena and her law firm received a 10-page response with a formal notice of counter-litigation for harassment, a summary of trespass evidence spanning weeks of demand for monetary restitution for increased electric bills, and a restraining request draft citing neighborhood safety. Ray also filed a complaint with the state bar, since Caldwell and Ashbury had no registration, license, or even a business number on file. Turns out her lawyer wasn't licensed in this state, or any state. Oops. From there, things unraveled quickly. First, Serena deleted every social media post she had ever made about me. Gone overnight. Then, Bob, the HOA president, sent me a vague apology email. "Mr. Hill, the board would like to move past recent misunderstandings and return to normalcy in Pinewood Estates." Normalcy? After publicly attacking me, enabling theft, and nearly dragging me through court with fake lawyers? Sure, Bob, let me just fire up the barbecue and pretend none of this ever happened. But I wasn't after revenge. I wasn't after lawsuits or settlements or watching Serena's Tesla rot on cinder blocks. I wanted something more lasting. Something people like Serena and Bob could never undo. Reform. I drafted a proposal. The Pinewood Estates Homeowner Protection Amendment. It included a new rule requiring any HOA complaint or fine to be backed by tangible evidence. A limit to how many complaints one resident could file in a 6-month period. Looking at you, Serena. A right for residents to record HOA meetings and demand transparency, and most importantly, a clause banning any HOA board member from intervening in private property disputes without clear cause or a vote. I didn't just submit it to the HOA. I handed out flyers door to door. I posted it in the community Facebook group. I held an info session in my driveway, complete with lawn chairs, lemonade, and a projector screen. 37 households signed on in a week. The HOA board had no choice. They held a special vote, and by a 2/3 majority, the amendment passed. That night, as I sat on my porch with Duke and a cold drink, I didn't feel smug. I felt settled, because I knew Serena wouldn't plug into my outlet again. Bob wouldn't dare stick another flyer on my mailbox. And the HOA? They'd think twice before siding with power-hungry drama queens over the quiet guy with the surge protector. They tried to paint me as the villain. But now, I was the man who rewired the system. Legally, things had settled. For the first time in months, Pinewood Estates felt like a neighborhood again. Kids played on the sidewalks. Dogs barked at squirrels instead of HOA board members. People waved without looking over their shoulders. But peace, in a place like this, it's never permanent. Not when there's still a Karen on the loose. And Serena Caldwell? She wasn't just licking her wounds, she was waiting. And what she did next would turn my quiet little street into a war zone. It started small. A series of anonymous concerns posted to the community message board. Scribbled in shaky handwriting. Is it safe to walk near Hill's house after dark? He has military wiring running through the yard. What if a kid touches something? Just asking. Can you booby trap a porch legally? I knew it was Serena. It had her scent all over it. Paranoia masquerading as innocence. She'd already lost in public, lost with the HOA, lost with her fake lawyer. So now, she was aiming for whispers, for fear, for neighborhood folklore, and it worked. People stopped walking their dogs past my house. Kids crossed the street instead of biking by. Even Brenda, sweet banana bread Brenda, wouldn't meet my eye at the mailbox anymore. But the real blow came one rainy Tuesday. I got a notice taped to my door. Again, not from Serena. From the county zoning violation. Unauthorized utility installation. They claimed I'd modified the outdoor electrical system in a way that violated residential code. That I was operating an unpermitted electrical system that may pose risk to surrounding structures. The surge protector. The same surge protector that passed inspection. The same one that stopped Serena's Tesla theft cold. I called the county inspector. The same one who'd cleared it weeks ago. Sorry, Mr. Hill. This came from higher up. Someone filed a formal complaint with detailed diagrams, photos, and language that flagged a state-level review. Someone had drawn up plans of my property, photoshopped electrical schematics, and submitted them under a fake engineering license. Serena had forged blueprints. That was it. She'd crossed from nuisance to felony-level nonsense. And I wasn't going to play defense anymore. I called my lawyer friend, Ray. I don't want a letter. I want a launch code. Ray didn't even ask for clarification. He filed 3 things within 48 hours. A civil suit against Serena Caldwell for libel, harassment, trespass, and abuse of process. A criminal complaint to the county regarding falsified zoning documents. A formal injunction barring her from my property, and limiting all further contact through legal counsel. But that wasn't all. I'd been holding something back. A final card. Something I hadn't revealed because I wasn't sure I'd need it. Back when Serena first plugged into my outlet, I'd done more than set up a surge system. I installed a monitoring relay, a small device that logs voltage fluctuations, timestamps, even the specific draw pattern of plugged-in devices. In other words, I had proof of every single time she'd used my power down to the second. I even had logs showing her using a heat lamp, her hairdryer, and at one point, I kid you not, her foot spa on my backyard outlet. I compiled it into a report, bound it, added photos, and I dropped off one copy to the sheriff's department, and another to the local news station. 3 days later, the news ran a segment. Tesla theft scandal rocks, Pinewood Estates. Veteran neighbor fights back with tech. My name was withheld at my request, but Serena's wasn't. The clip featured grainy footage of her sneaking onto my property at 2 a.m., plugging in her car, and walking away with a latte in hand like she owned the place. It ended with a quote from the sheriff's office. Tampering with electrical infrastructure and submitting false county records are serious offenses. Charges are pending. By the following week, Serena's home had a for sale sign on the lawn. She didn't even host an open house, just vanished. Tesla and all. And Bob, the HOA president who once stood at my door wagging a finger like I was a misbehaving teen, he quietly resigned. Said something about spending more time with family. Good. Maybe now his family wouldn't get fined for using the wrong mulch. I didn't throw a party. Didn't gloat, didn't post on Facebook or dance in the yard. Instead, I did what I'd always done. Sat on my porch, coffee in hand, dog at my feet, and peace in my chest. Because the war was over, and I'd won the only way I knew how. With evidence. With resolve. And with the kind of quiet strength these HOA bullies never see coming. By the time the for sale sign on Serena Caldwell's lawn tilted sideways in the wind, half the neighborhood had already moved on. People stopped whispering and started waving again. Pinewood Estates felt lighter, like someone finally opened a window after months of stale air. But I hadn't moved on, because while Serena was gone, her legacy remained, woven deep into the bylaws, the board meetings, the whispers of, "He's a troublemaker," that still lingered like a smoke alarm. Just barely out of reach. I didn't fight this hard just to win a personal battle. I fought to expose the rot, and now it was time to dig it out at the roots. It started with a clipboard, a simple clipboard, 30 clean pages, and a pen tied to it with twine, old school style. I called it the Pinewood Charter for HOA Accountability. I didn't try to dress it up. I didn't use legalese. I wrote it in plain English, with big, bold headers like no HOA action without evidence, no private property intrusion without homeowner consent, no fines without documented, verifiable, time-stamped proof, no board member may serve more than 2 consecutive terms. Every homeowner has the right to film, record, and audit all board meetings. These were common sense reforms. But in a place like Pinewood Estates, common sense wasn't common. It was controversial. The HOA loved complexity, loved loopholes, loved hiding behind procedure and platitudes like community values while they steamrolled dissent. So, I took it straight to the people. I started knocking on doors, not to argue, not to rant, just to tell the truth. Hey, I'm Marcus Hill. You probably heard some stuff. Some of it's true, most of it's not. But I believe no one, not even the HOA, should get to make up the rules as they go. The responses surprised. Mia Lane, whose roses had been threatened for excessive brightness, said, "Where do I sign?" Gary, who once got fined for leaving a kayak in his driveway for 6 hours, practically hugged me. It's about time someone stood up to those smug control freaks. Even Brenda, sweet, fence-sitting Brenda, finally admitted she was tired of getting roped into HOA drama just because she bakes well and minds her own business. In 4 days, I had 41 signatures. That was enough to force a vote. At the outdoor next HOA meeting, I didn't show up alone. I came with a stack of signatures, 3 folding chairs, a portable speaker, and Ray, my lawyer friend, who just so happened to be a Pinewood resident now, moved in 2 blocks over. Can't say I didn't recruit smart. We weren't there to beg. We were there to demand a vote, public, recorded, and binding. Bob had resigned. Serena was gone. The rest of the board? They looked like deer caught in a halogen headlight, the kind that know they're not getting out of this one clean. Carol, the acting president, cleared her throat nervously. "Mr. Hill, while your proposals have merit, changing the charter requires a procedural..." Ray stood up. "Calm, professional, lethal. Madam President, with 40% of homeowners requesting a vote, the board is legally required to bring the amendment to the floor. We can do it tonight or we can do it in court. Your choice." Silence. A beat. Then someone. From the crowd, Jim, the guy who always wore Army surplus caps, stood up and said, "Call the damn vote." It passed, 2 in favor, 7 against 1 abstention. The Pinewood Charter for HOA Accountability became law that night. No more secret fines, no more weaponized bylaws, no more HOA presidents acting like kings over compost bins and mailbox heights, and here's the twist no one saw coming. I didn't run for the board. People asked me to, begged, really. "Marcus, you've got to lead now. You're the reason we can breathe again." But I said no, because I didn't want power. I just wanted peace. So I nominated Brenda. Yes, banana bread, Brenda. She blinked twice and said, "Me? You're fair. You listen. You don't want it, which means you're probably the best person for it." She won by a landslide. Her first act as president, open every board meeting to the public with transcripts posted online. The HOA was no longer a weapon. It was what it should have always been. A service. A few weeks later, I was on my porch again, like always. Duke snoozing at my feet. The porch light glowing above the same outlet that started it all, now covered with a clear plastic lockbox. Just in case Gary passed by with his kayak, still slightly wet from the lake. He gave me a grin and called out, "Hey Marcus, no surge protectors aimed at me today, right?" I smiled. "Not unless you try to charge your Tesla off my mailbox." We both laughed as the sun dipped behind the rooftops of Pinewood Estates. I realized something. I hadn't just defended a house, I hadn't just defeated Karen. I'd helped remind a neighborhood who it really belonged to, not to rule books, not to fear, but to the people who live there, raise their kids there, fix their fences, and show up when it matters. And that was worth every page of paperwork, every knock on a door, every late-night cup of coffee by a glowing outlet. It looked like everything had ended cleanly. Serena moved out. The HOA got restructured. Neighbors started smiling again instead of side-eyeing each other. But if you think this was just some petty personal win, you haven't grasped the full meaning of what really happened. I didn't just protect an outlet. I protected the right to peace inside my own home, and to do that, I had to overcome something scarier than a Tesla stealing power, the silence of a crowd in the face of what's wrong. A month after the HOA charter amendments passed, I was invited to speak at the neighborhood's first spring BBQ, an event where, once upon a time, I wouldn't even make the guest list, let alone be the keynote speaker. Brenda, now the HOA president, with real power built on kindness, handed me the mic and said, "Marcus, if it weren't for you, we'd probably still be getting fined for leaning our bikes against trees." The crowd laughed. I took the mic and stood in front of dozens of familiar faces, people who once saw me as the grumpy recluse, now nodding in agreement. I'm not much of a speaker. I'm just a guy who used to serve in the military, used to fix generators in the middle of deserts, and once cooked hot dogs using a solar panel. The lawn erupted in laughter, but I kept my tone steady. What I learned after all those years is this: when someone steps across your boundary, whether with their feet or with a Tesla charging cable, you don't have to scream. You just need to stand firm. Hold the truth. And if necessary, let the whole block see it. Since then, I've lived the same way I always have. Quiet, simple, steady. But now, the world around me has changed. The outdoor outlet, now secured inside a waterproof box, has become a small but mighty symbol. Whenever someone walks by and jokes, "Is this thing gonna fry my car, Marcus?" I just smile and say, "Only if you're trying to steal electricity." One day, Brenda called me. We'd like to add an honorary advisory seat on the HOA board. No actual power, just someone to keep us grounded when we start to veer off track. I declined. I don't need a seat, just a place to stand. But I promised to always be around, in case anyone forgot that HOAs were created to serve, not to rule. I know out there are still plenty of folks like me, people dealing with their own Serenas, rogue HOAs, and rules wielded like weapons. And if you've read this far, if you're thinking, Marcus's story sounds a lot like mine, then let me tell you something. You're not alone. Maybe you're not an electrical engineer. Maybe you don't have cameras all over your yard. Maybe you don't know a lawyer named Ray. But you have the most important thing: the truth, and the will to defend what's right, even if everyone else stays silent. I once thought post-military life would be quiet, maybe even boring. I chose this neighborhood because I thought it was safe, friendly. I didn't expect it to be a small battlefield, with no gunfire, but very real harm, and I was ready for it, not with fists, but with paperwork, with evidence, with a power outlet, and a plastic box. That night, I sat on my porch. Duke, older now, still rested his head on my leg. The house was calm. The smell of BBQ still lingered in the air. I looked out at the row of houses, one of which used to belong to someone who thought power meant crossing every line. Now the lights were out. The house stood empty. And I knew. Every outlet on this street is a little better protected now, because this isn't just a story about a deep-fried Tesla. It's a story about awakening, about a community taking control back from the hands that misused it, about an ordinary man who used persistence to outlast a system that thought it could crush anyone. And if you ask me whether I'd do anything differently, I'd say, no, I'd still keep that outlet in the yard, but this time I'd add a second camera just for fun. I didn't choose this fight. I just chose to defend my home. And in doing so, I realized what I was protecting wasn't just electricity or property. I was protecting the right to live in peace, in a neighborhood not ruled by fear and silence. Because in a world where an HOA can fine you for trash day, Mix-ups or for planting marigolds too bright, silence might just be the most dangerous thing of all. I'm not a hero. I'm just a man with an outlet, an old dog, and one simple belief. If they want to take your peace, make them walk. Through the truth first. And sometimes a surge protector is all it takes to reset an entire neighborhood.